Hey everyone, welcome to the Actorzilla podcast. I'm James Larson, and on the podcast today we have RJ Magee. Welcome, RJ. Thanks for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, of course. RJ is super talented, and he is a casting director. He's a talent manager. He's a director. He's a career coach, a creative producer, an educator, and I know he is a talented actor as well. Yeah, we were talking about how we met at auditions, and I asked the question before about how just about all these different roles that you do. It's been fun to kind of see on Facebook kind of the interplay between all of them, and I would just love to know more about your journey between them.
Yeah, well, it's a great question. And again, thank you for having me. So, I finished my undergrad in 2012 at Temple University, and I was in a performance program. But while I was in that program, I sort of realized that I did have some interest in exploring, what we call the other side of the table. I didn't totally know what that looked like. I always knew that casting was something that interested me. I don't think I ever really knew what it truly meant to be a professional casting director. But while I was in school, I interned at the Art and Theater Company in Philadelphia as the casting intern for the summer, which was great because a lot of people were traveling during the summer. The Arden doesn't produce during the summer. So I was given quite a bit of responsibility on setting up casting assignments and auditions for their upcoming season. And actually, what was interesting about it was I sort of learned that I wasn't really ready yet to fully divest myself from performing. So when I graduated, I sort of hit the ground running. And that's where you and I met. I was sort of just doing the New York, pounding the pavement thing. I actually lived in Philadelphia. It wasn't until
Wow.
much later that I lived in New York City, but I commuted from Philadelphia to New York a couple times a week, going out on auditions. I had representation, an agent, and a manager. And then like yourself, I did shows all over the country. And then concurrently, while all of this was happening, I met a manager actually for representation for myself, but we really just hit it off immediately on sort of a personal level. And I said to him, I said, listen, if you ever have a need for an assistant or some sort of capacity that we could work together outside of you sending me out on auditions, I would love that. And a few months later, he contacted me and said, I have an idea. I think that we should partner up and you help me fill out my theater division. His office at the time was at 42nd and 8th, and he had never had a client on Broadway. And so I just started really small. I just started pulling people that were friends of mine that I had acted with, classmates, people that I met at auditions, and brought them to Jamie Baker Management is the name of the company. And I exclusively submitted them on Breakdowns Express for theater and musical theater. And then if they booked anything, then Jamie and I split the commission on that. And that started in 2014, beginning of 2015. And so now we're going on, over 10 years. Well, actually, a little bit under 10 years of our work together. And the work is almost 100% remote. I actually, in 2023, I only saw Jamie once. I'm going to see him in March when I'm in New York City for spring break. So it's a entirely virtual gig, and it's entirely commission based. So it's 100% based on if any of the people on my roster, any of the actors on my roster book a job, and then we take 10% of the gross of whatever salary they make, which is obviously pretty standard for New York representation, at least in theater. And that's sort of where I am right now with that. In 2018, I came off of a regional contract where I was just so fed up with performing. And I literally just made a LinkedIn and a Gmail account and started RJ Magee Casting, which is a freelance casting office. In a way, it's like being an actor. It's contract work, bid business work. So a producer or a director or a playwright or a composer comes to me and says, hey, we have this role in this play or musical or TV show or movie or reality show that we need to fill, or commercial that we need to fill. And so I'm sort of their personal shopper. I assess what they're looking for in that particular role, in that actor. And then I utilize my database of actors that I've met at showcases and who have auditioned for me previously. And I get submissions from agents and managers. And I try to narrow it down to who I think best represents my client's vision. So, not necessarily who I think would be the best for the role if I were directing it or producing it. I'm really trying to channel someone else's vision for their project and find the right fit for them. And so I still do that on a freelance basis. And then in 2020, just as the pandemic was starting, I went back to school to get my MFA because it had been a long time dream of mine to teach theater in higher education, specifically musical theater, and sort of marry the professional world and the academic world, because I felt like there was sort of a disconnect between those two entities, right? So, a lot of students were going into conservatories and BFA programs and being taught by educators who maybe haven't, auditioned or done the New York thing in 25 years, And so I felt like I really had a lot to say as an educator because I had done so much of just the boots on the ground, New York City, 16 bars, 5, 6, 7, 8, headshot resume across the floor, the stuff that James and I did for many, many years. And I wanted to sort of mentor the next generation and help better prepare them for that environment. So, in order to do that, to teach at the college level, you need what's called a terminal degree. And in theater, that's a Master of Fine Arts. So, I got an MFA in theater with a musical theater concentration, and it was very pedagogy heavy, the program was. So, I taught quite a bit. And I had taught previously to grad school and coached professional actors. I'm often asked to guest teach at Actors Connection and studios like that in New York and across the country. But it wasn't until I got to grad school that I actually started teaching beginners, which was really interesting, because every semester I taught acting for non-majors. So it was always interesting applying this kind of work to people who maybe aren't as familiar with what we do. And it was also a class that was required for elementary education majors. So it was fun to try to create parallels for these students as to how and why they could use these skills once they enter their building, as a elementary school educator. And I finished my MFA in May, and that brought me to where I am now, which is Longwood University in Central Virginia. We're about an hour and a half outside of Richmond. The 2016 vice presidential debate was held here. It's a beautiful campus, a small school compared to many other universities that we're familiar with. It's about 4,000 undergrad. And the theater department is very small. We only have about 30 majors at any given time. And then we have quite a robust program in terms of other students and other majors taking our classes and auditioning for our shows. And we have a BFA in theater performance and a musical theater minor. So earlier today, I was on a Zoom call, auditioning a student from Atlanta for our program. So that's sort of what the work I do here consists of when I'm not in the classroom. And when I am in the classroom, I'm teaching acting and musical theater performance and movement, and a class called Issues in Theater, where we examine how theater can be a vehicle for displaying and promoting and examining human issues that we struggle with every day, social issues, personal issues, family issues, financial issues, political issues. And I also do quite a bit of administrative work for the program. And on February 28th and 29th, we have Carrie Butler coming to campus to do a master class and to give a concert. So it's very busy here. But I do like the financial stability. And we also get some nice time off because we're on a university calendar. And our school is very supportive for professional development. So if I want to attend conferences or go to New York and take workshops and see shows, they can help fund a portion of those opportunities. And, the students I teach are all over the map in terms of experience level. I have some students that I feel like I could take to New York right now and, get them cast in a tour or something. And then I have, some students that have maybe never seen a play before ever in their life.
Hmm.
So it's really fun to work with all the different populations that we have.
That's awesome. That's quite a resume. And I don't know many people that do all that, that have that breadth of experience. I'm just kind of curious, what drives that? Like, what drives you to have these different experiences in the industry?
Well, career has sort of always been the thing that's driven me, sort of being able to level up in terms of whatever my profession is at any given time. So everything has sort of been a means to an end. And I would say for the most part, that end has been teaching in a prestigious musical theater college program in higher education. Um, I'm a visiting professor at Longwood. That means it's a fixed term contract. So there's potential for me to stay here, and then there's potential that I could end up somewhere else. So I'm always interviewing for other opportunities, applying for other opportunities. I just sort of want to be the best at what I do that I possibly can and have the most amount of connections and opportunities and um, the most robust resume possible. And I still act. I did Anything Goes this past summer. It was directed by Katie Huffman, who
Hmm.
was the original Ula and the producers, won the Tony Award for it. And right now I'm sending out materials for, summer performance opportunities because I do have my summers off. So I'm able to do that as well. I've always wanted to be an educator who can do everything that I'm asking a student to be able to do,
Hmm.
which isn't always the case with theater teachers. But I feel confident that um, I can execute most everything that I ask someone else to execute.
I
And
love
many
that.
times I do it for them so they can see how I want it done. And so, like a good example of that right now is I'm directing Little Shop of Horrors here at Longwood, and we open on the 21st of February. So many times I'll have to get up there with them and, act out the scene with them so they get a sense of the energy and the quality that I'm going for. So it's fun, but it is a lot of work. And, I don't have much of a life right now outside of my work because I'm just so dedicated to building this career for myself right now.
Yeah. So, what surprised you the most about going from being an actor to being on the other side of the table? Um, yeah.
How much rejection there is. I mean, I knew that as an actor, but I kind of thought it was just me. And like I was the only one getting rejected for things. But looking back, I actually had a little more success than the average person. And it's just unbelievable how many people we can submit for a project, how many people can audition, make a beautiful self tape, or have a very promising in person audition, and then they never hear anything. I mean, it's pretty staggering. So that is something that I have to sort of keep in mind every day. And now that we're in this world where self tapes are so prominent, especially for the first round of auditions, I'm able to see the self tapes before they go to casting, and I'll watch them and be like, wow, I can't imagine anyone else being more suited for this role. And then the person won't even get a call back.
Right.
So it's an incredibly saturated market. And now it's become even a little more national because of self tapes. They're able to consider people in other places a little bit more when that wasn't always the case. So um, it's just really hard to get a gig. I mean, if you're booking anything, you're kind of one in a million right now, you know?
Do you think?
And there's
Do you
way
think?
more programs that are graduating actors than there ever were.
Right.
There's like almost 300 BFA programs in the United States.
Wow.
And when you and I were, auditioning for schools, there was maybe a couple dozen at the most.
Right. So it's gotten more
So,
saturated, and it's also, there's other forces like COVID that has
right.
hastened the self tape. There's the Actors Equity opening up like that. I think that was a big decision too. So
Yeah. And, COVID closed some theaters. Um, it also made theaters produce some smaller shows so they could recover financially.
right.
But yet there's more actors than ever.
Yeah.
So I sometimes feel a little bit bad and depressed for people that are graduating
Yeah.
just because I know how difficult of a road they have ahead of them. And as you and I know, many people only stick with it for a couple years,
Yeah.
but they still have this degree that's very specific to one field. So then it
Right.
can become very difficult to transition to something else.
What do you think the key is to longevity in this career, in
Having
as an
something
actor,
else.
especially? Yeah.
Um, People used to always say, don't have a fallback plan because you'll have to fall back on it. But I actually don't know any professional actors, and including ones that are on Broadway and in TV and film, that don't have other things they do to make money.
Right.
So having other skills is really, really important. And it's also important that those are skills and jobs that don't make it really difficult for you to pursue your acting career. So, I'm not totally sure what kind of side hustles you've had. I know you're a musician, which is always a great extra skill,
Yeah.
but, waitressing and cater waitering and all those things can be tough because it's late nights. Real
It's hard.
estate can
Yeah.
be hard. That's almost just as much rejection as being an actor. Um, So I think it's important to have other things that you do, which is actually why I'm kind of a proponent of people getting a minor or a double major while they're in school, because those can be really useful.
I actually just got my BS in business administration
Oh, good for
management.
you.
Yeah, it was through Equity actually. So
Wow.
they had this program. I think they still have it, but it's through Union Plus, and I was able to finish my degree because I went to acting school in New York, and it was
Hmm.
I went to 2 years at university in Oregon, but I left to go to a conservatory in New York,
Hmm.
and it wasn't degree granting. So, but I
Yeah.
told myself, so I didn't finish my degree back then, but I always told myself if it was free and I could go back, like I wouldn't have an excuse not to do it, you know. Um,
That's incredible. I'm not familiar with that program. I need to look it up.
I know. I always tell people about it because I didn't know, and it had existed for 5 years, I think, before COVID, and then obviously COVID kind of drove it up because it's an all. It was an. It's changed since I was in it, but it's an all online program. It's through the
Yeah.
Ohio. It's through the Ohio University system.
Wow. Well,
And I know
congratulations.
many. Thank you, thank you. So yeah, we both graduated in May, and it's
Awesome.
yeah, it's really great, and I totally agree about having different skills. And I always tell people the story of I used to cater a lot too, and but it was always like you could be on Broadway one week, and the next week you could be catering. You know, it's like
Easily.
just
Yeah.
Easily. This business is nothing if not humbling for people, for most people, I
Oh
would
my
say.
gosh. I know Broadway actors that take tables on Monday nights, when they're not on stage.
Yeah.
But that's a good point that you brought up about the conservatories, the 2-year conservatories. And I have some clients from different ones that are amazing, but you don't have a college degree. So it can be limiting for pursuing other opportunities that aren't performing.
Right.
I think you
Yeah.
would do really well to get an MFA at some point, and there's some programs that are only a year, so you could knock it out in a year.
Yeah. I think what you did is super smart, getting your higher education, because that opens you up for so many more things.
Yeah,
And I think a lot, and I guess like you said, most people go through BFA programs and they move to the city, which isn't a bad route. I mean, a lot of people take that, but the
right.
question then is, and kind of what my site and I'm making a course right now for younger actors to kind of bridge
Oh
that
yeah,
gap between getting out of between graduating from college and then becoming a working actor, and like just all the practical stuff about making your actor's access look good and having an actor
yeah.
website and how do you get an agent and all this stuff.
These
And
programs don't do anything with actors access. I'm like, are you crazy? That's like the number one way that people get cast in a show.
I know.
I mean, that
um
is the industry standard is when I'm submitting someone for Broadway, I'm submitting their actors access profile to casting. That is what
right,
casting is seen. There's not
right.
really any other vehicle that's currently used.
Yeah, and I was just coaching someone yesterday and they were like, do you think it's worth it to upload to actors access, or can I just do my website? I'm like, yeah, like totally, you have to, like everything's done
Mhm.
through there, and it's, you have to deal with their pricing. I mean, it's a one time, everyone kind of bulks at the
Right.
pricing of like uploading a minute of footage and stuff, but that's the price. I mean, it's a low price if you think about it in terms of what it can do for you if you have good clips.
Yeah, and
um
it's a very kind of antiquated software too, so people
yeah,
get really sick of having to wrestle with it, but it is the industry standard. If you want to be,
yeah,
especially if you have representation and they're submitting you and you want to be on HBO or Netflix or Wicked or Disney or whatever, that is the tool that is used, the virtual tool that is used to submit actors and set up those auditions and submit
yeah.
the self tapes for the most part.
I'm curious because you're an active educator. Like, what do you tell your students that are moving to New York or another big market after they graduate?
Well, in New York, I feel like it's kind of sad a little bit right now. And I don't know what your experience has been like, but, those days of going from appointment to appointment um, don't seem like they're quite as consistent anymore because there is so many things that are done via self tape.
Right,
There was nothing more invigorating back in the day than going to an agent appointment at Ripley, and then you have another one at Pearl, and then you got to go downtown for a TV and film audition, and then you have your name on an EPA list or an open call. That was really fun, and I know the required calls are in person again, but it doesn't seem like the initial agent appointments are as um, they don't seem to be happening in person as much for a number of reasons. And I think one is they realized they could see a lot more people and consider a lot more people um, virtually and not have it be condensed to however many people you can see in a 10 to 6 day session with an hour lunch break.
right,
So at Baker, we have clients that, are getting asked to tape for projects that back in the day, we were never able to get people seen for in person, but you can probably solicit self tapes from as many as 3 to 5 times the amount of people that you would have been able to see in person on a
yeah.
private invited
It's kind of a
day.
double-edged sword then, because more people get seen, but then that's more people get seen. Like, for every opportunity there's tons more people being considered,
Exactly.
which It's
Yeah,
kind yeah,
and
it's
it's a live art form. So, and I feel bad for the TV and film auditions. I don't know how much you go in for those, but those are always so much fun because the casting people would always try to coach you a little bit and give you a couple different takes and
right.
try to get takes that had different qualities and acting choices assigned to them. So, you could sort of give them a little bit of a taste of everything that you could do, but um, it doesn't seem like that's as much the case, at least for the initials. Um, so I kind of feel bad. It's changed. I guess in some ways it's good, but I think it's just a lot. The culture of it is a lot different. I mean, I think when you and I met, we were at agent appointments for something. Um,
Yeah.
so if that were happening
I'm
now, it probably would not have
yeah.
been the same.
I remember the days where I would go, like you said, to basically 5 auditions in a single
Yeah,
day. And
I
in
did
January,
6. That was
especially,
the most.
used to 6.
I hit 6 one day. Yeah.
Wow. But this January, I mean, and there used to be a casting season of like January to, what
Mhm.
would you say, April or so? I don't
Yeah,
know.
for summer,
Summer for
summer work.
summer. And then,
Now I'll
but this
say
year,
as an agent
January,
or as a manager, sorry to interrupt.
yeah,
The casting season, there isn't really an audition season. I mean, I've had
right,
people get called in for Wicked and Waitress, the week before Christmas. It's just there is a condensed time of the year that's for summer employment.
right. Yeah. But compared to what it used to be. I'm also coming from I was in LA for a few years. So I'm kind of relearning the city myself, and comparing to what I used to experience in January. I was like, January, man, there's so many auditions. Every theater
Right.
comes to New York. There's such a fraction of what there used to be from what I remember. And I don't know if that's because of COVID, because all these theaters closed. It's because of self-tape. Like, I'm trying to figure it out and trying to suss out what's going on, because it just seems so low compared to what it used to be. Do you experience that, or am I
Um, I don't find that the breakdowns are any more or less busy than they've been in the past. I
okay?
can tell you that from a booking perspective, you know, I'm way down. I mean, my people are way down than we
Right,
ever were. So that's probably indicative a little bit.
right,
Um, but I mean, I have a friend who owns an agency, and I'm a manager, so we're a talent management company, so we're not franchised through any of the unions. But I have a friend that owns a union talent agency, and I mean, they're posting bookings every day.
right.
6, 7 people in one tour alone. I mean, that's thousands of dollars in commission.
Yeah,
I mean, that can be very lucrative. 5 or 6 people doing Grease on Royal Caribbean, just that one production,
yeah,
probably $1,000 in commission every week just on those people.
right,
Um, so if there's anyone out there that's looking to get into representation, you really want to examine what the jobs are that pay the most and that are hiring the most, and find actors that are competitive for those types of opportunities. So right now, cruises are a place where people can work and make a lot of money, and they're having auditions all the time.
right,
Non-union tours, don't pay that well, but if you can get a couple people in a non-union tour, then that could look kind of lucrative. But there's only certain actors that will do either of those things, and there's only certain actors that are competitive for those kinds of jobs because they're a very specific sort of skill set, in terms of look, in terms of vocal ability, in terms of dance skill.
right,
To be on the Mean Girls national tour, in the ensemble. I mean, that's dancing that not just every any old kid with a BFA musical theater can do. That's
right.
very advanced hip hop and jazz choreography, at least in my opinion. Um, so
Kind
it's
of
it's
jumping from
tricky.
that, kind of going off that, like, I'm a big proponent of special skills, like you said, I I've done music a lot as a
Yeah.
musician and singer. And what is your view of that? Because I always tell people, like, you need to have as many skills as you can. I mean, think, what did you grow up doing? Did you grow up and did you go to dance class? Did you play an instrument? Are you an
Hmm.
artist, like a visual artist? I mean, basically anything, but those two things are really big in the industry for musical theater,
Well,
obviously.
you're absolutely right. And actor musician is, in fact, the people that are actor musicians on my roster work the most out of anyone,
Right.
because those shows are continuing. They're being produced often, probably for the same reasons that we're talking about, because they are cheaper to produce because the actors are the musicians. Once it seems like I'm submitting people for once every couple weeks.
Right.
Buddy Holly, um, and then there's all these revivals that are actor musician sort of generated. So
Yeah.
it's an amazing skill to have. I've, something that always hurt my acting career was I'm not a strong musician. I don't have strong musicianship skills. So if you do, that can be an incredible asset. Um, but also have met a couple actors recently that are doing really well with being able to bring a little bit more to the table. Like they can do social media for the theater.
Really.
Um, they can do wigs for the theater. They can do seamstress work for the theater. Um, so anything that you can do outside of singing, dancing, and acting can be really beneficial. They can be a dance captain. They can be an assistant choreographer.
Right.
Um, they can help with music. They can help like do sectional work, you know, like take all the sopranos and sit down at a piano and go over their parts. So
And that's part of like making yourself indispensable to
exactly,
the
exactly.
company. Yeah. Um, from being a casting director too, like what makes an actor stand out to you during an audition?
Well, you know, I think the most common answer is preparation. And you would think that most people are really prepared, but that's not always the case. And I think actually a lot of people are prepared, but then they get nervous and then they don't look like they're as prepared.
Right.
Um, you know, having this feeling of being seasoned and experienced, which is a difficult thing to teach. But I try to do it with my students, even if they aren't experienced. There's sort of tricks to make an actor come across as looking like they know what they're doing.
Like what?
Um, it's hard because it's sort of a vibe. It's an essence. It's how you
Yeah.
respond to the people in the room, how you introduce yourself, how you come into the room, how you work with the accompanist, what material you choose, how you present that material. Um, you know, I've just seen a lot of really awkward, like scared early career actors during my time as a casting director. And it's just really evident. Even if someone has a pretty good voice, it's just evident when they don't have a lot of experience.
Would you say
Um,
that's like confidence and being prepared as far as like even
confidence.
rehearsing the whole audition
Yeah,
process?
and it's also like how you interact with the people behind the table, like not being weird and awkward. And I know, and again, it's like we say these things, but I think people think like, oh, duh, like that's really obvious. But then we continue to see it like all the time. So interpersonal skills are like really important. Honestly, the people who work the most are the people who are really easy to work with, you know, kind, down to earth, just like real human beings, you
Yeah.
know?
Not always on, not
Yeah,
performing in as
not
a
that
person.
weird actor, narcissism or neurosis. I
Right.
mean, I've done a lot of shows with people who were very difficult to work with, and I wouldn't bring them in for anything, and I wouldn't recommend them for anything. And in fact, there's been a few people that I've reached out to producers and said, "Listen, it's not worth it. Do not to hire that person, they're going to end up causing way more problems for you than
Right.
they would actually offering their talents to the show you want to use them in. I don't know what your experience like that has been, but um, there's a lot of actors that just aren't that much fun to work with. They make for
Yes.
an annoying or unpleasant work environment.
I say leave the drama on the stage. Like
Hmm.
it shouldn't be the process shouldn't be dramatic. The result should be the drama on the stage. Like
Exactly.
I'm always about just being a person. Just be a person. Like be a good person. Show up. And I don't know about you, but people have told me throughout my career, like as a way to kind of combat what you're saying about coming into the room more confidently, like I've been, some people say, "Oh, come in like it's like you're having a good day. Like act as if you're
Mhm.
having one of the best days of your life." Or, it's like there are some tricks. I think some psychological tricks because, like you said, people get nervous in auditions. I get nervous in auditions. I don't know if you ever did, but or do, but like it's part of it. But there's a lot of like reframing that you can do of like saying I'm not
Yeah.
nervous, I'm excited, and stuff like that, and I'm excited that it's going to go well and stuff like that. And I think those can be helpful to people.
Yeah, and being calm, it's interesting when people feel vulnerable and when they feel nervous and when they feel exposed, they can say and do things that are just a little bit abrasive. And
Mm,
so it's important to honestly, that's why a big part of my career when I graduated was I want to go to as many auditions as possible. So I get used to what nerves in my body and in my mind feel like. And I'm used to that. And I know how to sort of take those on and apply them to the performance that I'm doing, etc. Um, so repetition, going on as many auditions as possible, putting yourself in that environment, you know, it's a sensory experience as well. I mean, being in Pearl Studios, I don't know, whatever they use to clean it, there's like a smell, the fluorescent lighting, how you sing with a live accompanist in specific spaces makes a big difference. There's some rooms that are really live, there's some rooms that are really dead. um, and then being able to do your work regardless of what the energy of the people behind the table are giving you is also a big piece of it. Most of the
right.
time they look like they'd rather be dead than where they are at that moment. So you can't let that inform your acting or singing choices either. So, and then there's all the weird people you meet, in the holding room and in line. And um, so there's just a lot that can easily throw you. And so I think going on as many auditions as possible is actually a good way to dissipate that a little bit. But ultimately, what stands out the most is someone who's really, really right for what my client is looking for, someone who's really, really right for the role. Um, that is, I think, what really grabs people the most. And that's
I was
out of our
talking with
control as actors.
Yeah. I had the chance to talk with Jamie Beth Margolis,
Oh, yeah.
um, and she's a great casting director. Just did
Hmm.
Harmony on Broadway,
Yeah.
and she was telling me about how basically that obviously casting directors work on different projects at the same time. Like they can have one thing and you come in for that, but you're not right. And I think people forget that. They forget. I was talking with another actor and they were like, "Oh, I don't want to go to EPAs anymore. I don't want to go to the ECCs." And I'm like, "You're not going for the show. I mean, you are,
Hmm.
but you're also going for the person that's casting it, and they could be
Yeah.
casting something else. Like that. That is. I don't know. I don't know what your opinion is on this, but mine has always been like, people are like, how do you network in this industry? And I'm like, you show up to
Right.
auditions, you do good work. I mean, what are you going to do? Like, are you going to, I mean, you can also do the extra, like you can send postcards to people and you can,
Hmm.
there's events. I'm sure I never was
Yeah.
big into
Parties
that.
and
I don't
stuff.
know.
Opening
Parties,
nights and stuff.
opening nights. Yeah.
Um, yeah. I mean, doing good work in the room is the most that you can ask for because then if you don't get the role or you don't get a call back, that at least you did everything that you could do. And trust me, just because you give a lovely audition doesn't necessarily mean that they liked it, because this is such a subjective field, you know. Um, it's not Jamie Beth who tells this story. There's another casting director who always uses this analogy, and I think it's really good. She could show the same actor to three creative teams. One creative team says they sing sharp, one says they sing flat, and one says they're the best singer they've ever heard in their life. So people in our business, in this art form, for whatever reason, are very opinionated. I mean, I had some colleagues come and watch my show the other night, a run through, and oh, I liked this person. Oh, I didn't like this person. Oh, you thought she was good. I thought she was terrible. Oh, I thought she was amazing. So that's another part of our field that's really difficult. It's art, so it's super, super, super subjective.
Right.
Um, and so going in and doing your absolute best is the most you can do, aside from keeping up your skill set, as a singer, taking classes, seeing shows. That I think is always really, really helpful. Going to as many auditions as possible. Auditions are really the only thing that we have to keep up our skills as a performer, right? So if we're not auditioning and we're not doing a show, we're not really doing anything.
Yeah. I mean, there's classes, you can take classes obviously too.
Yeah.
But auditions are, but the thing is that I'm always thinking about is like auditions are a different skill than performing to me. Like it's different than being in a show because you don't have all the elements of a show. You don't
Right.
have lights and costumes and sound and weeks of rehearsal. You have you're giving them a taste of what it could be like, if they
Mm-hmm.
don't know you already. And it's so important to just show up and that auditioning is a different, it's a similar skill than performing, but it's not the exact same as being in a show, and you have
Yeah,
to be able to compensate.
I try to look at it as it's my show. It's like my solo
Mm,
show. You
right.
know what I mean? So
Yeah.
this is the one time where I can do something that is very well prepared, especially if it's from my own repertoire, material that I really believe in, that I know I sound great on, or that I know I'm super connected to. I have usually a wonderful collaborative accompanist there, and I have people behind the table who have to sit there and watch, and that I hope are like informed theater artists, that enjoy seeing something presented for them that I have confidence in. So I think there is a way to sort of mentally make that connection a little bit. And then
Right.
also on the flip side, we see all these people lined up at these open calls and these EPAs and stuff. And I just have a really hard time believing that all those people are ready to be showing their work to whoever it is that's behind the table. In fact, I know that most of them are not actually ready for that. So I think that's something you see a lot is people go to a lot of auditions, they do the whole thing, and really the work they're putting out there is not it's making a not a good reputation for them. Like, they're doing things that are actually going to be counterintuitive to their career down the line. Like, it's really difficult to get casting directors to call someone in that they've seen before that they didn't think were good, you know, even
Wow.
if it was at an EPA. I mean,
Right.
people shoot themselves in the foot a lot by going to all these EPAs and giving mediocre auditions. Because if I submit you to that same casting director and the EPA audition was pretty weak, they're not going to schedule you for an appointment for another project.
Right.
That's actually to me where the required calls are the best. The most useful is you go in, do something lovely, and then I submit you for a project that casting director is doing, and Jamie Beth or Holly or Rachel or Mary, they go, "Oh my gosh, I remember him. I think I saw him at something a couple weeks ago. He was awesome. I'll definitely schedule him for this."
Right.
Um, so I think
So
that
it's
will all work.
synergistic in that way. As
Right.
far as I think, even myself, I get into this frame. I'm like, I don't want to go to EPAs, or like it's but I know other people feel that way too, that they don't want to do it, and that it can all lead into something else and something better. Like it's all grist for the mill, as one of my acting teachers used to say, as far as like it all can feed into itself, you know, and like you going to the CPA could help you be called in for a different show, like you just said. Um,
Yeah, but I think it is important to have representation for that synergy to kind of pay off. So yeah, I'm a big proponent actually of required calls and open calls and pay to plays, but I think you need an agent submitting you concurrently for other projects that that casting director is working on, because ultimately they don't often, and this has changed with self tapes, they don't often actually call in people who they haven't seen before and whose work they haven't responded to positively in the
right.
past. Now, I found with the self tapes, they cast a wider net, you know, and so they'll take chances on soliciting a tape from someone that they're maybe not as familiar with. But when it was scheduling, you know, appointments on a 10 to 6 audition day, it was mostly people that they had seen before in some capacity and liked. So I think it's important that both of those things happen at the same time. I'm not a big proponent in general. I think you asked, what do I tell people if they're going to move to the city? You really need representation. I just don't. I'm not really sure how it can happen for someone unless they have legit representation with an agent or a manager.
And how do early career actors get them?
Well, they can email me at helpmehelpyougetrep@gmail.com and I can do it. Um,
There you go.
I have a whole system that I've come up with that I've been doing this for over 10 years, coaching actors on getting representation. And I essentially chat with them about their career trajectory. And then we write a cover letter. And then they submit that cover letter to about 200 agents and managers in New York City and New Jersey. And wait to see what kind of responses they get. But my success rate is close to 100%. I mean, it's been rare that someone hasn't gotten anything out of it. Now, I don't endorse or do anything like in terms of standing behind the representatives that they submit to. Like, it's just helping you get the deal with the agent or
Yeah.
the manager.
So by
What
100%,
happens
you mean
after that?
they've been represented 100%, or like that you've gone? Is that what you mean?
100% of the people who have done this have secured representation, close to
Wow.
100% have secured
Right.
representation with an agent or a manager. However, that doesn't mean that 100% of those agent client or manager client relationships have, led to some fabulous Broadway or TV and film booking. You know,
Right.
I can only help you get the representative to bring you on as a client. What happens after that, is not something that I have any control over,
Of
obviously.
course. Yeah.
So some of them have gotten agents and managers and it hasn't, the relationship kind of fizzled out. But I just
That's
got a
awesome.
text from a client, someone that did this about a year ago, who said they got a manager. They just got a self tape for the Anne Juliet tour. It's all of his dream opportunities are coming to fruition. So I have a lot of success stories. I
What are
don't
what are
actually
some
think
tips that you would give someone?
you want to essentially outline all of the things that you're right for that are actively casting.
Mhm.
So that is both plays and musicals that are done often, and then shows on Broadway and on tour that are not going away anytime soon,
So basically,
or
make it as easy as possible for them to know where
yeah.
to put you.
So, I'm just going to spitball. What are some shows that are being done all the time right now, regionally? I'll ask you. Throw a couple out.
Um, I know. Well, for my niche, like $1 Million Quartet is done everywhere.
Yeah, that one's not never going away. Once isn't going away. Rodgers and Hammerstein musicals are not going away. Disney
Right.
musicals are not going away.
Right.
Waitress is now a title that a lot of places are doing.
Beautiful.
Beautiful is
Yeah.
one that is never going to go away. Mamma Mia is never going to go away. So I would have
Hairspray.
you
Yeah.
Hairspray, Grease. I would have you in your cover letter write all the tracks that you're suitable for in those shows. Then we look at Broadway and touring. Wicked, never going away. So, can you be a role in Wicked? I would have you write that down. Wicked is often in casting sessions. They put out breakdowns every couple months, usually. Can you be in Lion King? Can you be in what else is a lot? Well, I would have said Phantom, but that's gone now.
Book of Mormon,
Uh,
I guess, is
Book of
one.
Mormon,
Hamilton.
Chicago, Hamilton. I would
Yeah.
have you list all the things that you could do in those shows if there are tracks that you're appropriate for.
Yeah.
Then we also do what's called your almost resume. So you list things that you've been up for that you didn't get, or positive relationships with other casting directors, people that have given you good feedback, people that have called you in on a regular basis. And then I also have you list celebrities that you're similar to, so they get a sense of your type, essentially your brand.
Yeah.
So let's say we were doing it for James. We could say he's got a little bit of Gavin Creel, but he's also got a little bit of Brad Pitt, and he's got a little bit of Chris Pine and Chris Evans, and also who's the guy who is Beautiful Noise, playing that role. Audra McDonald's husband, Will Swenson.
Uh,
That's sort
I'll
of,
take those. Those are very kind. Yeah.
yeah, that's how I would, that's how I write the cover letters, essentially,
Yeah.
using
That's
information provided by, the person that I'm working with. And then
yeah.
we just send them out. So it's not very targeted, though. It's like to anyone who is an agent or a manager. Because to me, it's hard to do targeted when it comes to searching for representation, because you don't know who's actually looking at that moment. So I think it's better to cast a wide net. I think in
Yeah.
general, it's better to cast a wider net as an actor than to be really targeted. I know that there are coaches and stuff who are like, let's really get specific about what you want to do. And that's fine, but it just seems like the more specific you are, the better chance you have of not working.
Right.
I was
And people
always,
think
I'd rather
and
work than not work.
right. I mean, obviously, ideally you'd have one amazing agent your whole career, but not everyone has that too. So it's not like it's a permanent decision. I would say,
Mhm.
as far as like who you're working with, it goes both ways. I mean, they can drop you, you can drop
Right.
them. I mean, it's a business of relationships. And what I tell people is, I mean, the way that I've gotten most of my agents is through friends, basically, but your way is cool too. I mean, it's all about who you know too. And, but the way you do
Well,
it is very helpful as far as speaking
yeah.
their language.
I mean, that's just one way that, I work with actors that are looking for representation. But at Baker, I mean, I've gotten people from showcases, from referrals, from the
Right.
best clients I have are people that I acted opposite.
Right.
Um, and most of the people that I work with, I've been working with for years, and some of them haven't booked something in years, but I know that they'll always at least put together a quality self tape. I know they'll always go to the audition. They'll be prepared.
Is
That
that
is
different
much
as
more.
a manager versus an agent? Like, do managers mainly have more patience, do you think? Or what do you think the difference
Well,
is?
I would say really there is that much of a difference besides the union affiliations.
Right.
Um, I consider myself pretty hands on with my clients. So, but that doesn't mean that there aren't agents that aren't hands on as well. I
Right.
mean, I'll text with people about what are you going to sing, what are you going to wear,
I would say it's more, I mean, isn't
like
it
this
more about a numbers
class.
thing? Like if you have 200 clients, or I don't know how many agents have, but if they have a lot more clients, there's less time to work with each client, right? But if you're a manager, generally you
Right.
have fewer clients.
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely, we're a boutique office for
Right.
sure. Um, so
But you
yeah,
would,
but I mean, the
yeah,
most that we do for people is get you an audition. That
right.
is like the primary goal.
Right.
You
It's up to
know, how
you.
you do in the audition we don't have anything to do with that.
Well, you only get, I don't know what percent you take.
10%.
Okay, yeah. So you take 10%, so you should do 90% of the work, which is, showing up and doing
Yeah.
kicking butt.
And, something people have to be cognizant of is 10% of the gross of something doesn't sound like that much, but it actually can be, after taxes and stuff, can be pretty sizable. And theater doesn't pay that well. So if you're going into that agreement with an agent or a manager, you have to be ready to pay. And theater salaries have really stayed the same in the last 20 years for the most part. I mean, a lot of the theaters are paying the exact same that they've been paying for years, especially for non-union. So,
Right.
and in fact, a lot of the non-union tours, the salaries have gone down. So, if you're going to work with an agent or a manager and try to get one of those gigs through us, we can be very helpful in getting you in the door. But then, you're going to have a big bill at the end, because on top of taxes and union dues and all the things that get taken out of our paychecks, you also be getting 10% of the gross taken out and given to us.
Right.
So it's not easy.
It's not easy, but for, like you said, so do you recommend that early career actors, like, you should try and immediately get an agent, or you think build up a resume
Yes,
before?
I
Okay.
think you should always getting an agent should always be the first priority. In,
Hmm.
in addition to building up your resume, I mean, it should be
Right.
both. And you can have an agent while building up your resume.
True.
Um,
Yeah.
I'm a proponent, and I think you and I are different in that um, our trajectory was a little bit different. I think you've been a union member for a long time, haven't you?
Yeah. About 10 years, more than 10 years.
Yeah. So I have never joined, and I haven't even gotten EMC points since I was in high school. So I have worked at equity theaters, but I am not a union member. For me, that has been the right choice because I always just wanted to work. I wanted to build up my resume, play roles, do
Yeah.
professional theater, um, but I didn't necessarily need to feel like I was only successful if I was in the union doing it.
Yeah.
So as I'm, approaching, I'm turning 35 in May. I mean, my feelings on that are a little bit different, but on the flip side, they're really not. I would rather do a production, a couple times a year with a great director and a great cast and, get to perform and get something on my resume, and not make as much money as my union counterparts, but I'm also in a different um, demographic. I get benefits through my job at Longwood, so health insurance isn't as important to me as it is to other, union
What do you
equity
what do
members.
you tell early career actors in New York who they just got to the city, they study musical theater or theater, and the non-union world, I've been told, is very difficult right now, with as far as people signing up the night before on their lists, and they sign up all their
Mhm.
friends, and they want to join the
Or just
union just
always
because. It's true. That has been how it's always been. But I remember being non-union, and it was difficult, and I remember showing up to tons of EPAs and never getting seen, or getting seen and never getting a role. And what do you think they should do?
Well, I think the EMC program, which I don't actually may not even exist, so I don't know why I'm talking about because I know there's been a lot of changes in the union. That was always great for me because you could get seen at equity auditions ahead of non-union members, but you still were non-union. So it was
Right.
sort of like you could have your toes in both worlds. I do know that AGMA loophole still exists where you can join AGMA and be seen at EPAs as if you were an actors equity member, but you're still non-union.
Hmm.
And whoever pulled that off,
It's like the
I'm
phi core of the equity world. Like, I never heard of
yeah,
that
I don't
actually.
know how that got passed by whoever was in charge because I know people that did it and really it really paid off for their career,
Hmm.
because um, they were getting seen at equity appointments for equity regional theaters that didn't have time to see non-union, that, their appointment slots were full, their EPA. There was too many people, too many union members. They weren't going to be able to see EMC or non-union. But as an AGMA slash not an equity member, these colleagues of mine were able to get themselves in front of these producers and thus be considered for that theater's non-union contracts, which all
Huh.
equity theaters have non-union contracts.
Right.
So the people that did it were really able to take advantage of it. But I'm not sure where it stands right now, but I think it might be now you have to wait a year before you can take advantage of that benefit as an AGMA member. And again, it all costs money. Joining all these unions costs money.
Yeah.
Um, but anyone now can join equity, but I would advise against it for most recent graduates. I think
Yeah.
the best thing to do is keep yourself as sort of open as possible to
Hmm.
getting any kind of performing job, And also, I think people think, oh, I need to join the union so that I can audition at EPAs and ECCs. Well, as we've said on this podcast, that's not necessarily like the end all and be all to getting cast in a show. It looks like that because that's what's publicized publicly, but it's not really where like the real casting takes place for those projects necessarily.
Right.
It seems like more and more the EPAs, the required calls for the Broadway shows, when they are, doesn't have any correlation to when the appointments for replacements are. You know, I mean, it's crazy to me. It's like two totally different schedules. Well, the replacement casting process, it has no schedule because it's based on when people leave.
Right.
So there isn't necessarily a direct correlation between required calls and replacement agent appointments. Um, so to join the union just for that benefit, I don't think is the right path for most
Yeah.
recent graduates. In fact, I think everyone should be going to like UPTA, United Professional Theater Auditions in Memphis.
Hmm.
That's where most of my work as a recent graduate came from, all over the country, theaters all over the country. But it's a non-union event for the most part. It's not for non-union actors and non-union producing entities.
I've heard of that. Yeah. Did you ever do Straw Hats, or do you know if
I
Straw
did
Hats
Straw
is still a
Hats
thing?
once. I do not know if it's still around anymore. I know Midwest Theater Auditions is gone, but then I know there's also some new ones that have popped up. But to
Yeah.
me, UPTA has always been sort of the gold standard. It's the most attended because it's like 80, 90 companies.
And it's
And you
worth
can only
doing
do
for
it.
sure.
Yeah, definitely worth doing to any listeners. But I think it's senior year of college and beyond. So if you're looking to get summer stock, like as a freshman through junior, you have to look at some of these other combined audition events. But those are really interesting on their own in terms of how to prepare for them because UPTA is a strict 90-second song and monologue. So to
Wow.
find material that works in that abbreviated of amount of time can be tough as well. And also, I think there's a temperature to those kinds of auditions that works better than like doing really dramatic work. So if I'm coaching someone for one of those auditions, I say, what can we do to get them to really laugh? Because it seems
Right.
like that catches people's attention more than something that's really like grounded and vulnerable and exposed. Also,
Yeah.
those auditions are in theaters. They're on a stage of a theater, and the company reps are sitting in the audience. So there's a level of sort of physical engagement and energy and aura that you need to have that's different from auditioning, in Pearl Studios. So
Yeah.
it's its own beast in and of itself.
I wanted to kind of change tacks a little bit and just ask you about social media. And do you see like how that's changed the landscape? Has that affected how your clients book at all? Like if they're a TikTok star or
Well,
anything like that?
it's important when it's important and it's not important when it's not important. I mean, yes, we've seen TikTok stars getting cast in shows and TV shows and Broadway shows, and I'm sure that isn't going to be going away anytime soon. You know, I have worked on castings as a casting director looking for influencers, um, and people that had large social media followings. That was sort of the specific criteria for those castings, but other than that, I don't notice it as something that comes into play very often.
Right.
So if you're someone who isn't into social media and getting thousands of followers, I don't think you need to feel like you're not going to book work, because I don't
Right.
notice it being a huge deciding factor, except when they're like, okay, we want like a influencer,
Is there a certain type of
that's,
project that like looks for influencers more?
well,
Like,
hosting, I don't know. I see them pop up once in a while, but not that often, honestly. Um,
I don't
Hosting is
know if
probably the
it's.
biggest one.
I'd be curious if it's because I was in LA, and obviously I think it might be more of a thing out there. But maybe not. Maybe it's similar.
Yeah, and you know, I am not a TV and film casting expert. Like I've had clients on TV shows and in movies, but I am, not super comfortable giving out like a lot of feedback and advice about like how to be on a TV show. I know that I can submit you for one if you are represented by me on Breakdowns Express, but beyond that, I'm not like an expert on how all of that goes down. As an actor, I was on hold for a couple, episodics and stuff, but, and I've been on TV and I've been on reality shows, but um, it's just my knowledge base is definitely like theater and musical theater. And in that
Right.
realm, I haven't encountered like, oh, what, how many followers do they have? That hasn't been a huge part of the discussion, except this
Yeah.
one casting job that I worked on that was not theater. It was a talk show and they were looking for guests that had a lot of followers. So
Okay.
that was, a big part of the process. So
Yeah.
if you're into social media and you want to like be famous on social media, go for it.
Yeah.
If you're
It
not,
can't.
but you
It
still
can't
want to be a
hurt.
professional actor,
Yeah.
I wouldn't say that you're gonna, I wouldn't be like, oh, I wouldn't
I'd say focus
discourage
on
you.
the basics first, right? Like,
Yeah,
just get your materials up there, and
yeah. Focus on being a great actor.
right.
And if your passion for social media evolves at some point, then that's fine. But that's not a prerequisite to being a professional actor.
Right. Right.
But I
Uh,
think social media is good for networking, actually,
oh,
keeping
really?
up with people, what they're doing,
Which one?
what they're
LinkedIn
working on. I do.
or
I
just
mean, I'm on
Instagram?
all of them, but Facebook and Instagram, I guess, are the ones where I really go to find out like what someone is up to. If they're
Like
in a
their
show,
personal profile
yeah,
or like a public
mhm,
facing? Oh, okay. Okay.
a
So Facebook
personal profile.
friends, basically. Okay.
Facebook friends, yeah. I mean, that's how you and I connected to do this podcast.
Yeah.
That wouldn't have happened if we weren't Facebook friends. We hadn't seen each
Right.
other in a long time.
Yeah.
So that's where it comes into play for me. And I do spend a lot of time on them because it's important for me as a casting person to kind of know what people are up to,
Yeah.
um, who's working, where are they working, what are they up to, are they taking class,
How do you
and I
recommend?
know,
Do you recommend? I mean, like LinkedIn. I think Michael Casera made a joke about LinkedIn being like, "That's how I find all my casts," basically.
oh, I
Like,
love LinkedIn,
okay, I was
but
gonna ask. Yeah.
not for finding actors necessarily.
Right.
Although
But
a
is
lot
there
of
a
actors
way that like
see them.
if you don't know someone personally, like is there a way that's not weird to reach out to someone on social media, like do a
I think
casting or
I think reaching out to them, some people will respond well and some people won't.
yeah,
Um, I'm never going to think less of someone for reaching out to me on social media. I mean, on LinkedIn, I get a million messages from actors all the time.
really?
I don't,
Okay.
and they're usually voiceover people, which I guess I'm not really sure why that is, but um, a lot of voiceover people have LinkedIn's.
Yeah.
LinkedIn has been great for me for like myself getting jobs in the entertainment industry,
Right.
Um, but if you want to try to get in touch with like a CAA agent or a UTA agent, I mean, they all have LinkedIn's. I have a feeling they probably get just as many messages from random actors as I do. They probably get a lot more. Um,
Right.
but yeah, social media, it takes up a lot of time. I'm getting tired of everyone just being on their phones all the time. I mean, there's a lot of things about it that are really depressing. I mean, we've totally lost our sense of social engagement, and just being
Yeah.
in the moment. But in terms of keeping up with people, I think it's amazing.
Yeah. I mean, the opportunity there to keep up with people is great. I'm kind of on Instagram more
Mhm.
now, and I kind of like that too. I mean, it's the platforms will always change. I think. I mean, there's new ones coming up every day, and it's just a matter of you have to know. Yeah, you have to get to know people on a personal basis. Like I just try and talk to people at auditions that I don't know
Oh yeah.
because yeah, because you know that you have something in common. I mean, I talk to other actors, and then you find out that they do more than acting, and just be a person. I think,
Oh,
and
I've had some amazing contacts from people that I've met at auditions.
yeah,
I've gotten people cast in shows that I've met at auditions. I've gotten referrals from people that I've met at auditions. You're sitting there, you go, "Oh, you've worked there. I would love to work there. Oh, well, I know they're still looking for so and so in this show. You should email them. Yeah, tell them, that we met, and I'll get, you can use my name. That's fine." I mean, that
yeah,
happens a lot.
I know.
Um,
It's a
so
smaller
I'm all
world than
about.
people think. I think,
Oh
like,
yeah.
and people usually, especially if you meet in person, like, it's not just like you're randomly sending a friend request on Facebook. It's like you were in the same place, and I don't know. It's just more organic. I think so.
Absolutely.
It's just about
So
showing up.
I encourage people to use social media to keep people informed about what they're doing and, what they're up to. And, I mean, honestly, I've seen people write, "Hey, I'm out of work for the next couple of months. Does anyone know of anything?" And
Yeah.
honestly, I've seen positive results from that, you
I see
know?
that all the time, actually. Yeah, maybe not
Hmm.
not just for actors, other people in the industry too,
Yeah.
though. Um,
Yeah. So use it all. Use every tool at your disposal,
yeah, and be social. Like I wouldn't say I'm the most extroverted person, but I try and be social. And just in your own way. I think be authentically you.
Absolutely.
You know.
Yeah, I mean, going out and meeting people, which is kind of a lost art, especially in New York, is still something that people do. I mean, New York is a city for people who are outgoing.
Yeah.
Like people move to New York because they like meeting interesting, unique people. You
Right.
know, sort of like the impetus for why a lot of people end up in New York City. It's for like the outcasts. You know, from everywhere else. So it's a great city for networking for sure. But it can
Yeah.
be exhausting, and not every networking opportunity is going to pay off and result in a job or something. But again, you have to literally try everything and anything.
You have to be pounding the pavement, and it means
Right.
not just showing up to auditions, but your whole life. Structure your life in a way that, like you said, do a survival job that is flexible.
Yep.
Um, think about how you want your career to
Classes,
be.
marketing materials,
Yep.
keeping up your skills, acting, singing, if you dance, if you do instruments, making sure, keeping up with private lessons or whatever, and all of that costs money too. So it's like, I mean, this is not an easy gig by any stretch of the imagination. So you do really
No.
have to love it to do it. But I also think that people think you can't do other things concurrently. And I have found that not to be true. I think it's
Well, you're proof
actually
of that. You do so
right.
much concurrently.
Thank you. But I'm not the only one, so
Yeah.
I
Well, like you said
encourage
earlier,
people.
like everyone does something else. Like no matter where
Right.
you are in the industry. I mean, Ryan Reynolds has Mint Mobile. Like he's not just
Yeah.
acting. So it's like, and you know what? That can be a positive thing. It doesn't have to be a negative thing. Like you can have so
I
many
mean, I'll never
interests.
forget, and her name is escaping me, but she was in Beetlejuice, and she was in that show that um, it was like a farce, and Jason Alexander directed it over the summer.
Oh,
Um,
right. I
the
forget
name
what
is
it's called.
escaping me. Anyway, she's been original Broadway cast of a couple different companies, and I mean, I'm almost positive she still has her 20 hours a week like personal assistant job
Yeah.
throughout all of it. You know, there's a million stories like that. So it's important when you know that you find something that you actually really love, so that it doesn't feel like it's so much a diversion from performing. You know, like
Yeah.
honestly, my survival job was talent managing for a long time, so
Hmm.
um, that never felt like something I was doing that was just sort of wasting away my time and my abilities. You know,
Right.
it was something that was inherently um, connected to performing.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, we've talked about so many amazing things, and I really appreciate you coming on the podcast.
Thank you so much. It was so nice to reconnect with you, and I'm so proud
Oh,
of how well you're doing. And
thank you.
I wanted to plug the reality show that I'm on, and it's
Please.
streaming
Yes.
on Broadway On Demand and Revry, which is actually a free streaming platform, Revry, and it's called Theality TV, Theality TV, and it is a reality show about the making of an off Broadway musical. We completed principal photography on Valentine's Day of 2020. And so it is a great binge watch, and it's all the things that you would expect from a reality show about the theater business. It's funny, it's disturbing, it's dramatic, it's all those things. Michael Musto's on it. Fred Rosser, first openly gay wrestler in the WWE. Lots of familiar New York actors. So I trying to get more people to check out the show, because you know if you like Jury Duty and Tiger King and Cheer, you know I think you'd really like Theality TV.
Check that out. Is there any other way for people to get in contact with you?
I can always be reached at rjmcgeecasting@gmail.com, RJ McGee Casting on Facebook. Add me on Facebook, RJ McGee, Instagram, RJ for the win, exclamation point, um, McGee RJ at longwood.edu. Career coaching, help me help you get rep at gmail.com. You know, they all go to the same place. So I
Awesome.
would love to hear from anyone who'd love to chat.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. It's really good to have. It's amazing. I mean, yeah, I think your career has been just endlessly productive and fascinating, and I think the fact that you're such a multifaceted person in this industry is a big reason why I wanted to have you on. So, thank you
Well,
so much for
thank
sharing.
you. And I appreciate all of your listeners for checking in. And now I'm off to little shop rehearsal.
All right. All
Have a good
right.
evening.
All right. You too.